Hi everyone, it's nice to see a lot of young faces in the crowd. Polonia's in good hands in the future here. So my name is Joseph Tomecki. Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Brukash. I am an undergraduate student at Loyola University Chicago, and I study biology pre-med. And I'll be talking to you about the dreaded MCAT. So just a couple of MCAT basics for those of you who have not taken it or don't know what it is. It ranges from 472 to 528 in terms of the scoring, and that sounds really weird. It's like a really weird number to have, but it averages out at right around 500. So you can see on the right-hand side here, 500 is like the average percentile, and a couple of score ranges I wanted to point out is 502 to 506. It's a competitive score for getting to DO schools, but I know a lot of people in the crowd are looking towards that MD route, and we want to be kind of focused on this right-hand side. So really a score above 510 to 528. It's a good score, it's going to be competitive, and it'll give you a lot of flexibility when applying to medical schools, so you don't have to be so worried about your MCAT score, because as Christopher's going to point out later on, there's a lot more than just your MCAT for getting into medical schools. So a couple of other basics. The test format, there's 4 sections of the MCAT: Chem Phys, Bio, Biochem, Cars, and Psych Soc. I have the subjects for each section underneath, and those are just kind of broader. There's a lot more specifics than just those. Also, another thing to point out, the test is 7 hours long, okay? That's a long time. So this test is not only testing what you know, but it's also a test of mental endurance. So it's really important that you also prepare yourself for a test that's that long. You can kind of see a little breakdown of what an average day looks like. I have 7:05 on there, it says 7:30, but when I took it, I didn't do the end of survey and the tutorial because I didn't really need to. If you take a Kaplan course or something like that, you don't need to do that either. Lastly, price and picking a date. So the price is roughly $325. So it's obviously a lot, so you don't want to have to take it multiple times, but also it's a small price to pay if you need to retake it to get into medical school. The other thing too is the testing calendar is early January through early September, so it doesn't happen in the late fall or in the winter. So you really want to make sure that you pick your test date properly, because it's only over a certain season. I personally recommend taking it in early summer. That way, if it doesn't go well, you have the rest of your summer to prepare for it and retake it, so that way you don't put yourself a whole year behind. So my story, I took the MCAT twice. So my first time that I took it, I was studying over the course of my spring semester, and a lot of things happened, a lot of things are going on. I was president of my fraternity, I was doing research, and also I just had a really stressful semester, so I couldn't put as much time into studying for the MCAT. But I mean, I still was able to study for it. I ended up getting a 503, so as I pointed out earlier, that's a competitive score for DO schools, but me, myself, I'd like to go to an MD school, so a 503 is not necessarily the score I wanted. It's nothing to write home to Babcha and Jajo about, you know? I ended up retaking it, and when I retook it, I ended up getting a score of 513, which I improved 10 points. That's not a very common thing that happens. Granted, I also was sick when I took it the first time, so that's kind of a caveat to put in there, but I spent the rest of my summer studying for it, pretty much treated it like a full-time job, apart from maybe going to the gym once in a while, and I ended up improving by 10 points. So you're probably asking yourself, where do I start, right? The best place you can start is in the classroom. A lot of the times when you're learning these subjects, you really want to make sure that you pay a lot of attention to what you're learning, because those are the things that are going to help you later on and help minimize how much you're going to have to review. Sometimes you also need to teach yourself something. So I didn't take anatomy and physiology, immunology, or microbiology before taking the MCAT, so I had to kind of learn those on my own as I was going through and learning. But it's not, I would say, make sure that you have all of your subjects taken prior to, because you don't want to be learning while you're studying, you want to be reviewing. Next thing is take a practice test. Before you decide Kaplan, Princeton, all of that, just take a practice test, because you want to understand where your baseline's at before you take anything. And also, like I said earlier, it's a 7-hour test, so you kind of want to get an idea of what that really feels like. In terms of beginning to study, you want to spend roughly 3 to 6 months studying completely comprehensive. So all of the subjects and everything that's on it, you want to be taking a while to study all of that, because that's what's going to be on the MCAT, and you don't want to make sure you don't miss anything, right? So I personally use Kaplan. Princeton's also great. A lot of my friends have used Princeton's too. So, but I used Kaplan. I read through all of them. It probably took me roughly like 4 months to get through all of it. But what determines it really is how much time can you put into it, and also how much are you reviewing versus how much are you learning. The other thing too is the next step you want to do is you just want to take practice tests. Take 2 to 3, kind of get an idea of where you are after you've done all of that review and get a new baseline for where you're at. Also, you have to be honest with yourself. Look at what you're getting incorrect and also look at what you're guessing. So if you're guessing, you got to be honest with yourself because come test day, those guesses fluctuate. You could get it right, you could get it wrong. So you also have to be really honest with yourself. This should probably take like a week, just as soon as you finish, when you're finished with all the books. Next is targeted review. I'm personally someone who likes lectures. I know a lot of people sit there and they're dreading lectures. I actually enjoy it because I like someone telling me information rather than having to sit there and read. That puts me to sleep. So I used Kaplan, and Kaplan had a lot of resources in terms of lectures and things. But also, YouTube's free. YouTube, you can learn a lot of stuff. I used YouTube a bunch. I used it for my physics, as well as other subjects when I was studying. Also, if you're a flashcard learner, flashcards are great for keeping all the things that you've memorized and maintaining what you know. That should be 1 to 2 months prior to your test. And that's, honestly, this is probably the most important part of your entire studying. The last thing is you need to increase your test endurance. The test is long, it's hard, it's going to be really taxing on you, so you want to be taking as many practice tests as possible. That way you feel prepared come test day and you're not stressing out about how long it is. So I personally went on a 3-day cycle where the first day I took a practice exam, the second day I reviewed what I got wrong, and the third day I did a little bit of targeted review for it. So you could, if you're really crunched for time, you could turn it into a 2-day where you're basically doing the review and looking at what you got wrong on the same day, but you don't want to wear yourself out right before you end up taking the test. A couple of tips for the certain sections of the MCAT. When it comes to the car section, the best thing you can do is do a passage every day. It's 10 minutes of your time, and it's not that hard, and it's the best way. Consistency is what improves scores for cars. When it comes to psychology and sociology, I kind of mentioned earlier, flashcards are great for either learning new information or just maintaining what you know. Bio and biochem, so they're going to give you passages, and it's basically going to have a bunch of random genes and acronyms and numbers that don't make any sense whatsoever. But flowcharts help you out because you can kind of make all of everything more simple as opposed to having to go back, and it makes getting through the questions a lot more easily, which time management's huge on this test. And then lastly, for the Chem Phys section, it's a lot of memorization of equations. Honestly, you need to know the equations, but come test day, understanding what the equations mean will help you out a bunch because it'll help you with guessing more fast if you need to. Some general tips is practice tests. You need to treat them like actual tests. So that means no phone, take your study breaks, get some snacks, recharge in your breaks, and then also caffeine. I cannot stress this one enough. If you do not drink caffeine, don't decide to drink like a Celsius the day of your exam because that's only going to hurt you. And also, if you're someone who does drink caffeine, just stick to your normal caffeine because you don't want to be tired and groggy come the end of your one of your later sections. Also, the best way to build confidence, more tests. More tests, better confidence, the better you'll end up doing. So I cannot stress that enough. The more practice tests you take, the better. Also, stay calm. I know this kind of sounds crazy because it's a super difficult test and it's like, oh, this is what's going to get me into medical school. But you want to make sure you stay calm. Me personally, as a Catholic, I pray before I take the actual test. I kind of said, I'm putting my fate in God's hands. And if you want me to be a doctor in the future, give me the score that I need so that way I can continue pursuing medicine because that's what I want to do. And kind of made a deal with the big guy upstairs, and he helped me out with my last score. So also sleep, please sleep. Don't decide to cram the week of. That's not going to help you at all. And then also your location, your test location. Visit your test location before you go, so that way you have an idea of how long it's going to take you, so you're not adding extra stressors to testing. Some larger takeaways to end up here is don't give up. One bad score is not going to reflect whether you're going to be a good doctor or a bad doctor. If you have one bad score, you can always retake it I went from a 503 to a 513. That's almost a 33 percentile jump. A lot of people can do it, so don't be discouraged by one bad MCAT score. That shouldn't be the determination of whether or not you should be a doctor. Early testing, I kind of mentioned it earlier. If you want to take a test earlier in the testing cycle, that way you leave yourself flexibility for taking it later on too. Also, practice. Consistent practice leads to improvement, whether it's flashcards. Just take the time and spend the time to actually improve your score. It'll help, I promise. And lastly, and I cannot stress this enough, the more tests you take, the more confident you'll be, the better score you'll get. Thank you.